did that really happen? I don't know. We didn't have cell phones, so like, did it happen? How will we know? We don't know. But they did leave. Alright, I've been gone a long time and I haven't filmed in forever, so we're gonna skip the lengthy intro and just get right into it, okay? This is Makeup and History. Sorry. Makeup and History. Today we're going to be talking about the First Lady and the time the British burned down the White House. Let's get into it. Technical First Lady of the United States is Martha Washington. Wow, Martha Washington. However, she didn't actually come up with that title. The official First Lady is Dolly Madison, who was the wife of James Madison, the 4th President of the United States. I know you might be thinking, well, why is that? It's because Dolly Madison was an absolute legend. Alright? She saved this country. Kind of. Dolly Madison came up with some of the traditions that we still have today, like having parties at the White House. She came up with the name the White House. Before that, it was just the house that the president lived in. But Dolly was like, no, we need an official title for this place. Let's call it the White House. Also, apologies for the way that my voice sounds right now. I'm recovering from a bit of a cold. Okay, so to start the story, we have to get in our time machine and we have to go back all the way to the 1700s. If you are a person of color, be safe. Sorry, that was crazy. That was a crazy joke to make, especially in this political climate. All right, put your seatbelt on. We're here. We're in 1768. Before continuing with the story, I do want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, ZocDoc. I get that finding the right doctor and scheduling appointments can be such a chore, and I understand it's discouraging, trying to find the right office, making sure it's in your network, that your insurance is going to cover it. Do they have any available appointments? I know that's my biggest pet peeve, is like finding a doctor's office and then finding out they don't have appointments for another year. No new patients for the next 6 months. Cool. Great. If this sounds familiar to you and you haven't been to the doctor's office in a while, I have great news because ZocDoc just made the entire process so much easier. ZocDoc is a free app and website that takes the stress out of finding high quality in-network doctors. Whether you're looking for a dermatologist, a dentist, ZocDoc makes it easy to compare options, read verified patient reviews, and book an appointment instantly. With access to more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, you can filter through in-network doctors that take your insurance and find offices located nearby. Schedules and appointments are also available on the app, so that's the biggest thing for me, is that I can see when I can actually, instead of like calling and being put on hold for 30 minutes to find out that you have to wait 7 months, you can read verified patient reviews and book your appointment instantly, all on the app. So it's time to take care of yourself and stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to the link in my description box and book an appointment with ZocDoc today. Instantly book a top-rated doctor. Instantly. Easy peasy. Okay, so Dolly was born May 20th, 1768 in Gully Ford, North Carolina. She grew up in a fairly large family. There were 8 children in total, and she was the 4th. 4 boys and 4 girls. Dolly's parents, John and Mary Payne, were a part of the Quaker community back then, and if you're unfamiliar with the Quaker community, like the guy from the Oats, Quaker Oats, they were a community of people who believed in peace. So they were a puritanical religious group. They were against slavery. They were a big part of abolishing slavery. However, Dolly's family owned slaves. So her dad was fairly wealthy within the community, and they owned slaves at one point. So I don't really know how that worked. I mean, some of the notes that I found also say that Dolly was a person of color. So I don't really know. It's murky. If you guys have any more information on that, please leave it in the comments. But their family was really wealthy and they owned slaves. But the Quaker community as a whole did not believe in the idea of slavery. Their goal was to be the perfect Christians, and they believed in equality for all and doing the best they can to make the world a better place. They also believed in wearing very plain clothes and not drawing attention to themselves, and they were very, very strict with gender roles. So like the women didn't get traditional education. Dolly and her sisters got a feminine education, I guess is what they referred to it as. Don't come for me. I'm sorry. Basically, they just learned how to housekeep, how to host, how to wash. They learned things like sewing and cooking, and Dolly actually really, really enjoyed this education. She thrived well in this environment. So in 1783, when Dolly was 15 years old, her father decided that he wanted to sell the farm, sell all of his slaves, and move the family from North Carolina to Philadelphia because he wanted to increase the status of the family at that time. And Philadelphia was the hot place. Like, that was where everything was happening in America. Shout out to Philly. Woo! Just kidding, I've never been there before. I know nothing about it. Is it still happening? What's going on there? Part of improving the family's status was getting, the daughters to marry into good families. And Dolly was a hot commodity. From a very young age, she had a lot of suitors and a lot of people asking for her hand in marriage. And this is because she was very attractive to people. She was tall, she had fair skin and dark hair and blue eyes, and she was just really pleasant to be around. I think a lot of people liked that she was so into the gender role thing, like she really enjoyed that aspect of her life. So she fit in well. All the guys were like, yeah, we like that. She likes to cook and clean. Hell yeah, Dolly. In 1790, Dolly gets married to her first husband, John Todd, who was a lawyer and a fellow Quaker, and the two of them had 2 children together. However, the marriage was short-lived because in 1793, Dolly lost her second son and her husband to yellow fever. So it was really sad time. Her husband was a pretty successful lawyer though, so he did leave her with quite a bit of cash, and if Dolly wasn't already a hot commodity amongst the men, she definitely was now. Not only was she good looking and she liked to cook and clean, she also had a bit of money. So everybody was trying to get Dolly. In fact, there were a lot of men that once they heard the rumors that her husband was sick, they started trying to pounce on her. They didn't even let the man die first before they were trying to move in on his honey. Gotta take advantage. You gotta get those opportunities, I guess. One of the men who starts courting Dolly at the time was Senator Aaron Burr, who is famously known for killing Alexander Hamilton. He was also the 3rd vice president under Thomas Jefferson, so he was a really prominent person in the town. And he hears that Dolly's husband is sick and then dies, and so he starts courting Dolly. However, his wife was still alive. She was sick and about to die. And so Dolly's like, bro, she's not even dead yet. What are you doing? So that doesn't work out. Aaron also introduces Dolly to a congressman at the time named James Madison, and they kind of hit it off, and he also starts trying to court and pursue Dolly. Now, James took an almost immediate interest into Dolly, as most men who met her did. She was very, very charming. The feeling wasn't immediately mutual because James was kind of skinny and short and not that attractive, I guess. No shade. This is just what the books say. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I guess he wasn't exactly a looker, and so she wasn't super interested. He wasn't her first pick. They were also pretty opposite in personality. James was very shy and reserved, while Dolly was really outgoing and friendly and charming, and so they had opposite vibes, but as they got to know each other, he kind of started warming up to Dolly. He was very smart and reliable, solid. He was a solid dude, I guess. There was also a pretty big age difference between them. Dolly was 26 at the time and James was 43. So, I don't know. James did ask Dolly for her hand in marriage, and she's like, I'll think about it. So Dolly is mulling over her options when she receives a letter from Martha Washington, who, at the time was technically the first lady. She was the wife of George Washington, so she was a big deal in the community. And Martha and George Washington at the time had been trying to play matchmaker in Philadelphia, basically putting together couples that they thought would be good for the future of the country. So Martha sends Dolly a letter basically saying, I think you should marry James. I think that would be good for you. I think that would be good for this country. Me and George think you should do it. So you should do it. And Dolly's like, all right, I guess. If Martha says I should do it, I guess I should do it. I don't know. All right. Okay, fine. So she does. Okay, so in September of 1794, Dolly and James officially get married. And Everyone's really excited about it. However, James is not a part of the Quaker community where Dolly grew up, and so she and her son get excommunicated, which is really hurtful because, you know, that's where all of her friends and family are. So of course Dolly is really sad about this at first, but not for long, because now that she's no longer a part of the Quaker community, she can really like thrive and shine. You know, she doesn't have to wear those plain clothes and be really demure and like shy. She can really spread her wings and do her thing. Dolly gets rid of all of her plain clothes and starts wearing, you know, all of the colorful gowns and turbans that would become synonymous with her look. She was very, very famous for her big eccentric outfits. Dolly also became famous in the town for her social events. As I mentioned earlier, she received an education, like a formal education in hosting and being a wife, if you will. But she was really passionate about it, and she took her events seriously, and people loved them. Like, it was the hot new thing. Every time Dolly was having a party, people were tripping over themselves trying to get into those parties. Dolly was so good at hosting these events and parties that in 1801, Thomas Jefferson hires her as the official host of his administration. As the host of his administration, she became very important for connecting international relations and, like, you know, putting important people in environments where they could like talk and do business, but it didn't feel like that. Like, it was like a party, you know. Okay, so her husband, James Madison, at the time, who's still just a congressman, but he decides he wants to be president, realizes that he could use his wife's hosting skills to his ability, and so he starts throwing events and, you know, building those connections to eventually become president. In the year 1809, James Madison runs for president and he wins, and his opponent at the time notably said to the papers that if he was running against James himself, he probably would have won, but because he was running against James and Dolly, that's why he lost. He knew that the only reason James won was because of Dolly. Everybody knew that. People didn't really like James that much, if we're being honest. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying James Madison wasn't qualified to be the president. I'm just saying he wasn't very likable, that's all. They didn't really like James. They just tolerated James because they liked Dolly and they wanted to be invited to Dolly's parties. And Dolly had a way of making people feel really open and welcome and, you know, just letting their guard down. Okay, so now that her husband was the president, she kind of just took her role as the administration host and rolled that in with her wifely duties. That's where we get the tradition that the first ladies have now, where they're like responsible for hosting people at the White House, and I don't know. What do the first ladies do? What do they do? I know they do stuff. I know that, but like, I'm gonna move on from this. Dolly was the first wife of the president to take on those duties and make them like official roles, because she was already doing that for the previous president. She also came up with the official name for the president's house, the White House, and she and James were the first people to actually live in the White House, which is interesting. I don't know. I find that interesting. Like, where were they living before? What, like, was it just a house that they would go to before, or what? I don't know the details of all that. While living in the White House, Dolly also began hosting these once a week parties where she would invite politicians in the town to come and kind of meet with the president in a less formal setting. And these became really, really crucial meetings and gatherings where like a lot of things would take place. Like, they would make a lot of decisions because it was just kind of relaxed, you know. Again, she was excellent at getting people to let their hair down and maybe say yes or do things that maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. I wasn't there. But these parties were also really good for bonding a lot of the politicians. Like, they formed real camaraderie, if you will, at these parties. Like, it was a real brotherhood, which was necessary for the country because shit was about to hit the fan. Like, it was about to get real, okay? Over in Europe, the British and the French armies had really been going at it. They weren't doing well at all. And the US had done its best to remain neutral. However, the same year that James Madison became president, he decided that he was going to cut off trade with both the French and the British armies, and they were really pissed about that, especially the British. They were like, "Excuse me, sir? Who do you think you are, sir?" The British were pissed. They were like, "Wow, seriously? Really? Really, James?" British were already pissed off that, you know, the Americans were trying to do their own thing, and they just hadn't had time to really focus on that. However, when they stopped trading with them, they took this immediately as a threat, and they used the Navy to start bombing the hell out of American ships. So this continues for about 3 years. Like, during James's entire presidency, the British are just coming after us, just attacking us, you know, and it's starting to get bad. Everyone's like asking James, you know, maybe we should back down, maybe we should chill out. And James is like, no, we're not gonna, no. And he decides to declare war against the British, and everyone is really confused and upset by this, so much so that they wouldn't acknowledge it. Like, they called it Madison's war. They were like, this is his problem. I don't know what, he's tripping, basically. They weren't wrong. Like, the British were already pissed off, so they took this declaration of war very seriously, and they start attacking inland. Like, they're like, okay, all right, yep, we got you, bro, we got you. And they start going in. They start attacking all of the cities in the US at the time, which weren't very strong, you know, like they were still really new, trying to get their footing. Because the British was already at war with France, they were stationed in Canada, in land, and so they started, you know, moving into American cities and just really wrecking it. Okay, so now the year is 1814, and the attacks are just getting worse. The British are not letting up at all, and so James is like, oh god, maybe I need to do something about this, like, I need to leave. And so he leaves the capital, he leaves the White House to go and try and help on the war front. Dolly stays behind to show strength, basically to show everyone that they aren't worried about the British coming and taking the capital. Even though they're taking all the other cities, it's fine, you know, like, it's fine. Dolly's not tripping, she's not pressed. Dolly takes this a step further, and she decides, I'm gonna host a party. Even though they hear rumors that the British are coming to take the capital, she's like, no, they're not. No, they're not. And you know what? I know so much they're not. I'm gonna we're having a party. The rumors keep getting more and more intense that the British are coming, like they're coming for the capital. And Dolly's like, no, they're not. They're not coming. It's fine. Anyways, I'm having a party, and she sends out invitations to host a party. The local paper, however, is publishing stories about how close the British is coming and, you know, what's happening on the war front. And Dolly's like, whatever. All of the guests and the people that she invites, however, are seeing, you know, what the paper is publishing, and they're getting nervous, and they're like, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know if we're going to make it to this one, Dolly. And she's like, of course you will. Of course you will. I can't wait. We'll see you then. Unbothered queen, okay? Literal icon. We live in our Delulu until it becomes Tralulu. Is that the saying? I don't know. Dolly was definitely delusional, though, for sure. As the party is getting closer and closer, many people living in the capital begin fleeing and leaving because they heard the British were coming, and they believed it. Dolly is still just planning her party, getting her dinner ready, as she did. Like, this was a normal thing for her. Business as usual. It was very upsetting to her that people were declining invitations to her party, but she didn't let that stop her. She continued planning, you know, just chugging along. And then she receives a letter from James saying basically, you know, don't worry, honey. Don't worry, everything's fine. But I just want you to stay on standby just in case I tell you you need to leave. You know, you need to be ready to go at any moment. And she's like, why would I do that? why would I leave? I'm hosting a party. James is like, trust me, babe. If I just say you gotta go, you just gotta go, okay? You can still have your party. Everything's fine, but you just gotta go. She's like, okay, cool. So on the day of the event that she was planning, August 23rd, you can literally hear cannons from the Capitol, okay? You can't see them yet, but you can hear war happening. Dolly's still like, business as usual. We gotta get our dinner ready for our guests. We gotta get the china. I don't know why that's so funny to me, but like, she just really did not care. War what? War who? Who cares? Get a party through. The staff at the time thought she was absolutely insane, but you know, they had to take their orders and they just continued on as usual. Dolly was thinking that, you know, even though they could hear the war happening, the British weren't going to win. They were going to lose, and then her husband, James, would make it back in time for the party. He would be back in time for dinner after he beat them. That's really what she thought. Our girl was so delusional that James does send messengers. He sends 2 men covered in dust to tell Dolly that, you know, she needs to leave. She needs to evacuate. And she's like, no, y'all don't. Who are y'all? I don't know y'all. Whatever. Set the table. Get the dinner ready. Eventually, it does become obvious to Dolly that, like, things are serious. None of the guests show up. There's a whole dinner set and nobody is there. The staff are looking around nervously, like, what are we doing? What is happening? They start to see the British troops, like a mile away. They can see them. And then James Madison finally sends his most trusted advisor, assistant. I think it was a slave, TBH. But he sends this man, and says, Dolly, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here. And finally she believes it, because she's like, oh, I know my husband trusts you, so if you're saying it, then it must be true. She's like, okay, we gotta go, we gotta get everything out. She begins frantically trying to save anything that she deems worthy of saving, because, you know, the British are gonna get there and just destroy her. So she's grabbing things and ordering her staff to grab things and throw it in the carriage so they can, you know, get away. Now, the things that Dolly deemed important were interesting, of course. You know, she knew she needed to take some of the papers, you know, some of the Declarations of Independence, but that really wasn't her jam, right? Like, that wasn't what she thought was the most important thing to save this country, okay? So in the carriage, some of the items she picked were fabulous. I'll just say that. I'll say they were fabulous. Period, Dolly. She took all the White House silver, okay? She took the drapes that were in her husband's office. She's like, the country needs these curtains. She took the blue and gold china. That was a major hit at all of her parties. She also took down the portrait of George Washington, the original portrait of George Washington. So the reason we have that now is because of her. And then she did take some of the Declaration of Independence documents as well. Maybe some other documents. Again, that wasn't really her thing. You know, that wasn't really what she was about. So they get into the carriage and they get out within an inch of their life, okay? Like, the British show up there and they are shocked to find like a full-on gourmet home-cooked dinner on the table. And so they eat the food, and then they burn it down. They burned it all down. How fortunate is the British Army to get like a home-cooked meal? They said that the table even had glasses of wine in them. So still the hostess with the mostess. The next day, the British Army continues burning down all of the buildings. They burned down the White House. They killed 30 men and injured 45 men. And then the day after that, on August 25th, something historians say was mystical happened, which I don't know. I don't know how much of it I believe, but basically they said that God sent a storm into the capital that was so crazy that the British Empire was like, oh no, we need to get out of here. Like, maybe God doesn't want us to do this. Like, we need to stop burning down everything and we need to leave, because the storm was just so bad out of nowhere. Did that really happen? I don't know. We didn't have cell phones, so like, did it happen? How will we know? We don't know. But they did leave. Okay, so a few months after the storm on the Capitol takes place, the war officially ends, and when the rest of the country finds out how brave Dolly was, you know, leading up to it, they become even more enamored with her. They're like, wow, what a legend. She's so brave. Hell yeah. Even though most Americans disagreed with the war, they really respected the way that the Madisons had handled everything. Thank God for that storm. Thank God. Or I might be talking with a British accent right now. Sorry, that was crazy. I didn't have to do that. I'm sorry. Alright, you guys, that is it for this story. I hope that you enjoyed it. Leave comments down below for ones that you would like to hear. I'm gonna try and like make them a bit more concise moving forward. I feel like I used to really draw them out a lot, but maybe you guys like the more drawn out ones. I don't know. I can do more drawn out ones if I'm not doing makeup as well. It's becoming a bit too much for me, if I'm being honest. I gotta be honest. It's a lot. Maybe it's just because I'm sick, because I'm recovering from my sickness. Maybe once I feel like better, it'll be easier. I don't know. I don't know, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Love you!